episode of Gov Tech Today. I'm Russell Lowery.
And I'm Jen Saha.
And together we try and bridge the gap between .com and .gov. Today we're going to focus in on the budget. The governor's budget was recently released. We've had some time to dig through and analyze it. But we're going to have our usual focus on technology and see what the governor's budget roadmap looks like and holds out for technology. Are you ready to talk about that?
I think so.
Okay.
Are any of us really ready?
Well, the headlines, what the public is hearing is about a massive budget deficit and the agony and pain associated with that. But you've been looking out and you see some of the same old spending and things are going to continue. Maybe we can start with maybe some of the mission critical, some legacy systems that are still being updated and dealt with.
Well, I think high level, you hear about the doom and gloom, but overarchingly, I was pretty happy with how things came out. It's not the massive, $20 billion holes that we've struggled to fill in just recent times. So, we are looking at some deficits, but this isn't what we've faced in recent times, which is like everyone has to take, a 10% or a 15% haircut, and we're looking at layoffs or furloughs. Overall, it was fairly positive, right?
And AI played a big role in that. There's some controversy among the numbers and some risk that the legislative analyst has pointed out. But there's billions of dollars associated with AI that are reflected in budget estimates.
Yeah, I mean, no new taxes, but we are really banking on those high earners and the revenues from them to come in where the governor is really hoping they come in order to avoid any further deficits.
That was I think one of the bigger picture items about the budget. They kicked a lot down the road to be determined when the May revise comes out, and they revise the budget numbers based on new projections about where the economy is and where the dollars are.
And I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? Our taxes aren't even due until April, so we really have no idea what our budget that we're working with is going to be. What the January budget typically reflects is just the governor's priorities and where he wants to start. And hey, if we have this much money to work with, here's how I want to, as your governor, want to spend it. So now the back and forth starts. What we could end up with in July could look extremely different from today's budget. So that's always the caveat, right?
Sure. AI is certainly, it's on everybody's lips, and it has such a big impact on the budget and the revenue numbers. But there's some interesting things about the regulation of AI, and how would you characterize to date the governor's approach to AI?
So there were some legislative initiatives passed last year, and those are receiving some funding for implementation in his proposed budget. And I think it really has been fairly measured. And we've talked about it on this show in the past that he's listening to industry. Industry's telling him what's possible and what's not possible, and we're working together to sort of come to the middle on something that makes a lot of sense for AI companies and citizens.
Well, I thought I detected at least a rhetorical toughening of the governor's stance toward safety, reliability, monitoring AI, at the same time making provision in the state budget for the state to continue to move forward on using AI to deliver services to the people of California. So it could just be a rhetorical shift about the need to regulate AI, but it certainly bears watching.
Well, one of them that is getting some funding is AB 853. That was the California AI Transparency Act. And that definitely is like, we want to make sure we know what's going on and that AI is doing the right things and not doing any harms.
Well, I picked up on AB 979, the AI Cybersecurity Playbook. And so the Office of Information Security is going to be collaborating and saying, how are we going to approach this? And my part of me says, good luck.
Right?
Good luck with that. It seems to be moving so fast.
Yeah, it's tough to put anything into policy that's moving so incredibly quickly. And I think that's another balance that the governor has done a decent job in striking so far. He's not putting these things in legislation. He's putting direction to have a policy in legislation. And that policy can be changed a whole lot easier than the legislation can. So like we saw him veto some bills earlier a year or two ago where it was like, we're going to put specific numbers around model parameters. And it was like, in looking back at those, like we would have been out of date and out of compliance within like 4 months. So thank goodness we didn't really, but it's more policy direction in we want to have safe and secure AI. We want to have AI that complies with our cybersecurity regulations. So, hey, experts, go figure this out.
Well, I also picked up on a number of different funding requests from different departments and agencies that are saying they're facing staffing issues on dealing with cybersecurity, AI cybersecurity, and that the risks have changed with just routine cybersecurity, and everyone's asking for more. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, what can they fund internally and what do they need to come back and have a budget change proposal, a budget request for? You can always tell who got audited last year because it comes out that, hey, they need more this year. So that's pretty good indicator that they had some deficiencies in a recent cybersecurity audit. Every state department's audited I think it's every 3 years
Right.
on their cybersecurity and their compliance with CalSecure, which is our statewide cybersecurity strategy. And so, yeah, I can pick out those guys. They keep it all quiet. Like no one wants to,
No one's
tell
trying to
you,
blast it,
right?
right.
No one wants to tell you where they're failing, but it's pretty easy to pick out when they're like, hey, we need more staff. We need more support here.
Yeah, and from the .com perspective, it could be a good roadmap to identified pain points. So you're not fishing if you can help them solve a pain point, or if you can help them prepare for an audit by solving a problem. That might be a good way to initiate a productive conversation.
Yep, definitely. I mean, they're telling you what their problems are by asking for this money. So any way that you can help them out and be proactive in that is always appreciated.
Over the past few years, one of the biggest priorities for the governor, he's put some really big brain senior government official attention onto it, has been the Middle Mile Broadband initiative. Hasn't gotten a lot of press attention or the biggest headlines, but there's a lot of money. There's projects that are moving, and there's been some dramatic movement at the federal level and a different approach to this. Can you speak to that at all?
It has been a bit of a moving target from the federal level. You have a new administration that didn't start this initiative, but are carrying it forward, and they have different priorities and they have different outlooks for how they want to see this money spent. So it has been a bit of a stop and start. There was some money clawed back as it relates to rural broadband, serving diverse populations, that type of money, saw some cuts. But at the state level, we're really trying to get creative. We still have those ambitious goals, and they are full steam ahead, pun intended, on getting broadband up and running and serving every citizen in the state. So they've broken ground on a number of projects. They're charging along with keeping it going. And they're actually asking the vendor community for help too. So most recently there was a request for partners. So now we've turned to, okay, I don't know if we can depend on this federal money. So we're looking towards public-private partnerships. What do you, vendor community, have to put forward to this effort where we can partner with you to sort of still accomplish our goals?
That is, so adversity brings some innovation and
Creativity,
some opportunity.
right?
Creativity.
Every
and
crisis
opportunity.
creates opportunity.
I was investigating this maybe a year and a half or so ago, and what part of what got my attention once I understood it on paper was just to go sit at a hearing. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know what to expect. And it immediately got my attention that you have people like Nick Maduros who are sitting through the details. You have Leanna Bailey Crimmins sitting through the details. You have legislators who are
Yep.
not sending responses. And what was kind of eye-opening for me is that you had various state agencies that weren't all on the same page, and they were having a public conversation about who was responsible for certain delays. It was unique in my state government experience, where usually that stuff gets worked out, particularly between state agencies behind the scenes. But here you had senior leaders from different departments publicly working out some of the reasons for the delays with specific miles and markers and permitting problems. If you're at all interested in state government, or you have an interest in this area, there's a lot of work that's being done in public.
Yep.
Related to the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. It's worth spending some
And
time
that's
on.
that's just at the state level. Like, you add that complexity, having multiple agencies involved, different guys in charge, different funding streams at the federal level too, and those guys are dealing with the same complexities, the same arguments. So yeah, it further complicates itself.
Well, as we wrap up kind of the look at the state budget, a couple of things that I know all of our listeners are going to be interested in. There are a couple proposed state procurement changes and how the state's going to go about procurement. And it seems like RFI2 is going to be here to stay for a while. Do you want to speak to that at all?
So RFI2, the request for innovative ideas, and we talked about this on episodes in the past. It's, here's my problem. Tell me how you, industry, would solve it.
I love that approach.
Everyone loves that
Honestly, yes.
approach. That's so great. Like, this is how we bring the best together. I mean, it does have its complexities, but we've seen a shift, and, the governor's budget furthers the shift that this is going to be the way we're going to partner to solve problems in the future. Have we solved all the kinks as to how you do a comparison apples to apples, or how we're going to fund some of these POCs? Not really, but that's sort of to be determined. But I think there is consensus that, yes, like, we love this. We have ideas. We want to bring them forward. We want to help.
That part I totally got. The alarm bell started ringing for me when I saw that the governor's budget, in praising this, still said the state said it's 3 times more resource intensive to evaluate these kind of procurements
Sure.
than other kinds, which usually if the state wants to do something, they minimize the complexity or cost.
Yeah, I mean, you could sort of see how that's the case, though, right? Because if I say, like, here's my problem, I could get 3 very different solutions to that
Right.
at 3 incredibly different price points, different. How do you even compare those, right? Especially when we're looking at best value, best fit, which one of these best solves my problem and works within the state's regulatory framework, financial framework. So I could see how it would be really resource intensive to sort of analyze these and walk through it.
It didn't scare you because the number of projects going through this process is growing so quickly and so fast. I was aware of dozens. There are hundreds.
Yep.
There are hundreds that have gone through this, and I'm scared because I obviously missed some, but there are hundreds, and it looks like it's not slowing down.
Yeah, I've been seeing all kinds of fun stuff. So RFI squared, there's an invitation to negotiate out on the street right now in California, which is exciting. Those don't come around very often. So yeah, lots of sort of different procurement vehicles, different ways of buying that I'm excited for. Like, it has to be more simple and easier, and we have to end with better outcomes. And
you said simpler and easier.
That doesn't mean less time consuming.
Okay, got it. Okay.
That just means, like, and you have to look at the model too. Like, you could have business leaders coming in and analyzing the RFI squared solutions. You don't maybe need a traditional procurement person who's going to be checking a reference and giving points for something here and there. So how we use our state resources, sure, it is a little more resource intensive, but you might be able to spread those hours among a broader group of professionals to sort of even it out. where it's really like, this is more rational, but it does take a little longer because we're seeing more solutions. They're very different.
I had somewhere I wanted to go, but you just said something that got me thinking. In that sort of evaluation, how will the state? What's the mechanism to know that it's technologically feasible, that it's not just BS, that is
Right.
vaporware,
Smoke and mirrors.
smoke
Yeah.
and mirrors?
I mean, so far they've used like proof of concepts, which is great, right? Like, let's try it out. Let's do a small pilot and see how it goes with that. So they can really kick the tires on it before they're saying, yes, let's do this. But that's all also pretty costly and
Yes.
resource intensive, from the state side as well as the vendor side.
side, right?
So like, we're not going to build a system and then have you tell us, never mind, we like this other one better. So it's not perfect, again, but I love the idea of being like, we're just going to tell you what our problems are, and we want to hear how you guys would fix it.
I support everything that you just said there, but the alarm bells are ringing with another procurement process, a different way to contract, a different way to do business. This one is more expensive up front for both the state and but also for the vendor community. I know that if my clients are not hearing about it, or hearing about it late, or I'm not seeing opportunities, small businesses can't necessarily afford to front with no cost a 6-month proof of concept, where they're perfectly capable of doing it. They just can't do it for free for 6 months.
Sure.
So only certain people with certain depth of finances can do it, which doesn't necessarily mean they've got the best product, but they are financially able to participate in that procurement.
I think it's something the state is fully aware of, thanks to professionals like us that are
Right.
like, hey, we're waving this flag here, and they're working on sort of ways to make that easier and less costly. Huge initiatives focused on small business in the state. We've reviewed a number of them together, and so writing them out of this entire RFI process because they can't afford to front a POC period, that's sort of detrimental to what the state's trying to accomplish, right?
Right. And then I guess I'll wrap it up with this, but there's a new procurement off-ramp for climate-aligned contracts. So OSTP is establishing a team to manage statewide contracts for climate resilience and environmental technologies. One, that's a very specific kind of off-ramp.
Yep.
And there are billions of dollars in bond funding. I'm thinking of Prop 4 specifically, that had $10 billion worth of bond funding, which isn't subject to the same general fund limitations that we're seeing across other technology procurement. So this is going to open up opportunities for that. But again, the complexity of having a different review process and a different procurement process, depending on what the technology is going to be used for. Is that technology going to make people who can afford consultants or have a pre-existing connection a little more valuable?
I mean, it's definitely good news for the consulting crowd out here, that understand how things work. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of the mind, like, do we need another office? Like, why isn't this lumped into one of the multitude of offices that already exist? How is this different than like environmentally conscious purchasing and what DGS already has running over there? So love the focus. It's great. Yes. Love tapping into existing funding that can be used for new technologies. There is an incredibly robust industry in this space in environmental technology. I think to be determined on sort of how this shakes out and what that office is going to do that's different or not different from existing functions that are already out there.
Well, as a final word of encouragement to either our .com or .gov people, as we're at this point in the budget process and we see the headlines about deficits and closing gaps and those sort of things, what's your advice on how to approach during this budget uncertainty between now and when the revise comes out in May?
Just be incredibly patient. I think no one knows what's going to happen between now and May, or certainly between now and July. everyone is really going to be watching those revenue numbers that come in between now and that May revised deadline. And this is sort of even what the legislature is doing. They have kicked off this week with budget hearings. And it was like, we're just going to wait. We're just going to wait because like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to nickel and dime everything now when we don't even really know what kind of pot of money we're working with. So the revenue volatility is real and is going to be very impactful as to which of these initiatives make it through and which ones don't.
So everybody's crystal ball is a little cloudy. Just need to be patient.
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.